everybody to our next digital transformation series webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about the hidden cost of outdated servers and why upgrading servers in your environment should be a top priority today, tomorrow, and forever as long as you have servers. So we'll go ahead and let everybody know some of our little key insights of some of recommendations that we have, how to know when you need to upgrade your servers, the full gambit. We'll go ahead and bring it into our life of the world of servers.
I'll move us to the next slide.
All right, so some of you might know me before. My name is Robbie Swiebel. I am the Director of Engineering for Professional Services. I've been in the MSP business for about a little over 15 years now. I kind of like to stay at the forefront of technology, so my forte is all things 365, Azure, cloud, you name it. I love doing it. And I got my buddy with me here today. Go ahead, take it, Zach.
Hello, everyone. My name's Zach. I'm one of the engineering managers here on the professional services team. This is actually going to be my 7th year with the company. And in that time, I've seen all sorts of manner of infrastructure, networking, servers, and so on and so forth. I've replaced probably dozens of servers myself, and I've overseen dozens more.
Yeah, well, we both represent professional services well. So if you do decide to upgrade your servers, it'll probably be our team that does the project for you. So we like to make sure that we keep you on the forefront of everything.
Okay, that's the next slide.
All right, so before we get into our webinar, we do want to talk about the upcoming webinars that we have. Be on the lookout for the next monthly digital transformation series. It's going to be focused on helping our clients, key decision makers, stay on the top of technology and security trends. So not only do you have the latest and greatest, but do you have the latest and greatest that is also securing your business, making sure that we're keeping all the bad actors out and your business and your proprietary information safe. Also on a monthly cadence, Sourcepass offers our different series of webinars called the Learning Series with a focus on educating end users to maximize our clients' investment in technology. So how do we actually start using what we're deploying for you? And as always, you can register for all of these events right over at our website, right at sourcepass.com/events. All right, and then right here you can see over at sourcepass.com events, we have our March 12th learning series, what to know about Windows 11 and if you're going to be facing the upgrade. And then on March 26th, we're going to talk about the dangers of outdated OS and how to start planning for those Windows 11 upgrades. Just a quick reminder, at the end of this year, a little bit before the end of the year, Windows 10 goes end of life, so everybody needs to be prepping those Windows 11 upgrades and seeing how they're going to affect your business. So really good webinars to attend. Every business out there will probably be affected. Everybody's got some Windows 10 computers out there. So we'll help you on that journey on what it's like to go from Windows 10 to Windows 11 and just make sure that it works right for you and your business. All right, just a couple of housekeeping tips. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A button right at the top of this window. You'll see it right there, Q&A. Lots of people end up using the chat anyways. Don't worry, we'll monitor both just to make sure that we do answer any of the questions that you have. And then just a good reminder, at the end of this webinar, there's going to be a feedback survey being sent. We would love it if you guys can let us know exactly what your thoughts of. Did it help you? Is there anything we can do better? Do you want my personal email address because I'm so awesome and you just want to talk to me all the time? Just let us know. We'll go ahead and make sure that we make these the best as possible for everybody listening and attending. All right, so back to the meat and the bones. So key topics we're going to be discussing today about outdated servers. Reasons why businesses continue using outdated servers is going to be a real big topic. Lots of older environments out there have pretty specific applications that only run on XYZ. We're going to try to walk you through how to start planning for that. What else do we got on the plate, Zach?
We're also going to be talking about the hidden costs of outdated servers and highlighting why it's imperative that we get on them as fast as possible when we are identifying that they're in need of replacement and the dangers of waiting.
Ooh.
Uh, Next up,
The dangers of waiting, always a key. We're also gonna dive a little bit into signs that it might be time to start retiring those servers. So, what are some key things to start being on the lookout for? What are some key indicators that say, hey, it's going to be about time to replace this server? And we'll kind of walk you through that journey of what you can start looking for that'll help you on that. And then what are we going to talk about, Zach?
we'll also talk about the benefits of upgrading. It's not just about avoiding negative consequences of your servers becoming outdated. It's also about what do you stand to gain by moving to new, fresh hardware.
Awesome.
There's also alternative options.
Awesome. Can't wait to discuss those and hear you. One thing that we're also going to dive into is reasons to consider cloud and hybrid solutions. So not always do you need to replace a server with a server, you might be able to really enhance your business with some other options along the lines that might help you work more efficiently, help you be more cost efficient, and really help drive your business. But it's about making sure that the right solution is picked for you, just depending on what your needs are.
And last but certainly not least, how do we prioritize the order of operations for what we need to do? Are some servers more important than others? Do we need to do them all? Do we only need to do some? How do we balance the needs of the business against the needs of replacing outdated equipment?
Are you telling me all servers are not created equal, Zach?
That is precisely what I'm telling you.
All right, all right. I can't wait to hear the journey on this one. But yeah, so those are the key topics. We'll start diving in now. All right. So just a little bit about outdated servers. Quick and dirty, an outdated server is one that no longer is supported by a manufacturer. So every manufacturer, whether it be Microsoft as a operating system provider or HP, Dell as an actual hardware provider, they're all going to put an end date on whatever it is that they're deploying because they need to move on to the next iteration of whatever it is that they're creating. Next operating system iteration, next hardware generation. They have to put an end of life date on that because they're going to eventually stop needing to have their coders work on old code and start working on newer code and make sure that it's right. Um, a server is typically considered outdated if the hardware is 5 or 7 years old. Don't panic. Everybody knows that there's 15-year-old servers out there, but you just want to make sure that you're on the right path to replace them eventually. But usually around 5 or 7 years is when you can start noticing a little bit of kinks in the system. You might need to kick the tires a little bit to make sure it's running all the way. But you should really start planning at about a 5 or 7 year replacement for servers. And that's just hardware alone. Now, there's always operating systems. So every server needs an operating system that it runs on. A server is outdated if it's running. We'll talk about it later, but really anything older than 2012 at this point, and then we'll even talk about the dates for 2016 going end of life. But really, these older operating systems have a ton of reasons why they're going outdated. We'll dive into that a little bit more, but as you can see, hardware and operating system lives can really determine what makes a server outdated.
So next up, let's talk about why businesses may continue to use outdated servers. Uh, let's start with the first one. Most important, obviously, cost concerns. Updating your server is not free. It does have costs. And the number one concern that we consistently see when it comes time to talk about this topic is what is it going to cost me? How much am I going to be paying for hardware, warranties, software licensing, the labor necessary to even perform said migration? Next reason would be disruption. Obviously, downtime is one of the scariest things any business can face because if you're down, you can't make money. Then there's always the fear of how much downtime am I going to need to take on in order to address upgrading my servers. Reason number three, lack of awareness. Sometimes we're not even aware of what risks or costs we may face. We may discover as we're trying to figure out what we're going to do with your server upgrade and discover, oh, this software vendor doesn't support the platform anymore. You may have to change to a different software platform entirely, which could have surprise costs that weren't originally planned for. It's another thing we try to always look out for when we're planning for server replacements. And lastly, we have compatibility. Sometimes applications just don't support newer platforms, and that's something that has to be looked out for. You may have a line of business application that only supports Windows Server 2008 and has not been updated since. It's going to be a challenge potentially in order to get that migrated to a newer Windows Server version.
Yeah, I think that last one, Zach, is one I see a lot of in the wild, is a lot of like really specific
Yep.
like, oh, it's just working on that as it sits and nobody knows what to do. They're like, I really, my business depends on this app. What do I do from there? So I really think that's a big one that I see out in the wild a lot.
Yep, very common to see, especially in fields such as like manufacturing, where oftentimes software is purpose-built for a specific machine, and you're still going to be using that machine, but there's not newer software available for it.
Yeah, I was doing some scoping the other day and I ran into a Windows Server 2000 still out in the wild. So don't don't stress. You're not the only one with old servers, but that's what we're here to guide you on your journey, you know. All right. Hitting cost of outdated servers. This is the one I don't think a lot of people put a lot of time into until it's a little bit too late. So one of the big things that outdated servers can cost you and your business is increased maintenance cost, frequent repairs and updates required just to keep them going. A lot of times what you see is, hey, this server only works right for about 3 days after a reboot. So every 3 days, you're having to reboot the server just to get it running back to how it normally runs. And that's something you want to keep an eye out for because every time that server reboots, you know that's going to be a downtime period of hey, make sure it comes back. And if it's on the older side, those reboots are going to start to take longer and longer and longer and longer, and it's really going to start affecting your business because you don't want that downtime to happen to you. Um, you can get, like I was saying, decreased productivity, so slow performance, frequent downtimes, a lot of service tickets coming in saying, "Hey, the server's not acting right again. Can't connect to it. You got to reboot it again. Oh, you're running out of space. Let me clear out some temporary files." So there's a maintenance cost of just frequent service tickets being like, "Hey, do it again. Kick the tires again. Make this thing work." And that could really slow down your business. You know, nobody likes to be interrupted in the middle of the day to reboot a server because it's going up there in age. The big one too is going to be security vulnerabilities. There's risk of data breaches and cyber attacks due to outdated security measures. So that operating system that you have, it's not going to be receiving any patches anymore because the coders have now moved on to the newer operating system. That hardware that you have, those firmware, there's not going to release any new firmwares. So holes in the security are going to be released and there's no firmwares to patch it and make sure that whatever it is that they were exploiting is now fixed and secured. So it's a really big issue with outdated servers. And then compatibility issues, problems with newer technologies that you have. So maybe you just bought an awesome new printer, right? This is the greatest printer. It could print 4,000 pages a minute. It's the greatest thing out there, but wait a second, that printer doesn't have drivers in your operating system anymore because it's too new. They didn't make 2008 drivers for this. So how do you get it set up in your environment? So those are common things that you can run across that'll cause these outdated servers to really start showing their age and really start costing you and your business time and money.
And this flows nicely into what is the signs that what are the signs that we should be looking for that it's time to start looking to retire these old servers. As Robbie was talking about before, a big common one, diminishing performance. Your servers are starting to struggle with either handling file copy paste movements, starting to struggle with running your line of business applications, um, frequent issues with lag or downtime from employees. Not only does that hurt morale, but it also just reduces overall productivity, which ultimately costs you money. You're not able to do as much as you used to be able to do. Um, Increased maintenance costs. Costs for repairs and maintenance go up. Obviously, if we have to continually reboot a server in order to keep it functioning, that's going to impact your service agreements because that takes time and resources to maintain. So not only do you have to worry about the risks of that additional downtime impacting your bottom line, but you also have to worry about it potentially impacting another part of your bottom line, your service agreement, eating up useful service hours that could be spent working on other aspects of your business. Uh, if any hardware failures occur on the hardware, as servers start to age out, it becomes harder and harder to find parts to replace those if and when they go out, which can exacerbate risks of downtime should you experience any hardware failures. Um, when it comes to aging hardware, servers usually around 5 years or so will start nearing their end of life. Usually, most servers are expected to go for around 5 to 7 years of support these days. Um, if your warranties expire, similarly in line with the replacement parts, you may have to pay higher out-of-pocket costs to get the hardware because it's not just included in your warranty anymore, which could also result in also fulfillment delays since you're not going to be able to get it directly from, HP or Dell anymore. Um, as Robbie was mentioning before, older hardware also is more vulnerable for security reasons. You'll not have as much availability for security updates and patches, which makes you more vulnerable to all sorts of nefarious activity. Ransomware being always the biggest and scariest one for modern businesses. And of course, compatibility issues. You may run into issues with a new piece of software that just doesn't support your hardware or your software. You may need to increase network speeds in order to work with a new piece of equipment. You may need a new piece of software in order to stay compliant with regulations that just doesn't support your software or hardware anymore.
I'm glad you touched on the morale portion of that, Zach, because I think I've every office has that thing that's aged, and you're like, yeah, we don't use that. It doesn't work right. Why don't you fix it? It just costs too much. So use this instead. I think every business that I've walked into has something like that, and it's really just it's depressing. People are like, yeah, that printer only works every 5 tries, so keep at it.
Yeah, it can
It's
really take the wind out of your
aggravating.
sails sometimes.
Yeah, like I just want to print a document. Well, but yeah, I think that morale one really hits close to home to me.
Same here.
Um, all right, so we're going to touch on a couple of key topics here. So, what's the difference between end of support and end of life? Two different terms that you might hear floating around when we talk about aging equipment, right? So, end of support, often abbreviated as EOS, is the date on which the manufacturer no longer provides support services, including technical assistance and security updates. So that's when Microsoft says, "Hey, you know what? We're done with this. If you have a problem with it, sorry, you need to move on." And that could be really big for any type of support. So if you have this weird issue, nobody's ever seen it before, there's no posts on Google, and you're racking your brain trying to figure out, how do I make this work for my client, and there's nothing that could help you. You're stuck. And that could really put a wrench in your plans because, hey, you thought it was just going to be a quick reboot, and it turned out to not be a quick reboot. So you really want to separate out end of support and end of life. So end of life is the date on which a product or service is no longer sold or further developed. Usually end of life is after end of support, and that's the day that it's just not going to be sold anymore. Um, Once a server's OS reaches end of support, it's open to cybersecurity vulnerabilities. So that means, hey, there's going to be hackers out there that are still trying to find vulnerabilities in these older operating systems because they know, hey, easy target. no matter what we find, it's not going to be patched. Nobody's going to fix it. Nobody's going to prevent us from doing this. So like let's go at it. And hackers love that because they also know that people don't often upgrade their equipment when it's needed. So they know that if they find a hole in this operating system, that's keys to the kingdom. You know, they know that all these servers are out there in production that they can start freely going after. So I think that's a really big important aspect to be aware of with this older equipment, is that you're really at risk of being insecure. Couple of quick notes to touch on here. For end of support, Windows Server 2003, that ended 10 years ago. So really hope you don't have any Server 2003s out there. 2008 was 2020. 2012 is 2023. And then Zach, you added this one in there. Man, Zach, when does 2016 go into support?
That goes out in less than 2 years. So now is the time. If we have 2016 out in the world, is to start thinking about what is the end of life going to look like for that for us? What are we going to do with that? Because it's going to come and it's going to come fast.
Yeah, I can remember 2016 felt like it was just released yesterday, and we're already at end of support. So it also feels like they're crunching down the timelines a bit for end of support, and things aren't lasting as long as they used to. You can see right there, 2003 to 2015, that's 12 years, but they brought down 2012 to 2023, that's 11 years. So you can see they're trying to shorten how long these things are out there, and I really think it's part of that security vulnerability thing. You know, they don't want these insecure systems laying out there, you think?
Yeah, I think it's also partially they're trying to like develop more frequently. They're trying to like move forward with newer technologies faster. So I see it as both them trying to, you know, get to the future a little faster, but also try to keep things fresh more frequently and keep things safer for longer.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool.
So let's talk about some of the benefits of upgrading our hardware. Obviously, first and foremost, we've been talking about security quite a bit here in this presentation. Number one, enhanced security and compliance. New servers come with the latest security features and updates. They help protect you against vulnerabilities. And up-to-date servers will help you meet your very important industry-regulated compliance. This is very important for a lot of businesses that have cyber insurance. Those are getting stricter and stricter to meet every day. So having outdated hardware could be the difference between you being approved for a cyber insurance policy from the beginning. um, Improve performance and efficiency. Newer servers will generally help you reduce downtime. You don't have to worry about things like needing to reboot in order to keep the server working properly. Uh, Keeps you working more continuously. Just generally more efficient, reducing any sort of bottlenecks that your people may have been running into with your old equipment.
Real quick on
Uh,
that one, Zach. Doesn't improved performance and efficiency also come with cool new hardware features? Like I know we were talking the other day about a client who had 1 gig NIC scoped, and we're like, no, 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 10 gig NICs is where it's at, right? So
yep.
does that fall into the same spot?
Yes, yes. These are actually the perfect opportunities to also look into if there are other benefits that can be wrapped in. And we have had clients where when we've been, planning these out, we've made the move to 10 gig networking, which dramatically reduces, you know, waiting around for files to go from place to place. Which depending on what kind of work you're doing, could be a huge, huge improvement.
Yeah, so I
I
think
know, I know
it's
anyone that works with large AutoCAD files and stuff definitely appreciates having a little bit more speed on their files.
yeah, yeah. That you could go on. I just thought the 10 gig NICs are just mind-blowing phenomenal.
Yeah, it's crazy. I remember when we started doing 1 gig as like a new technology.
Right?
Oof. Of course, there's also room for potential cost savings. If you're running into needing to consistently repair or worry about expensive hardware replacements on older equipment, those things tend to get removed when you move to newer hardware. You'll have an updated warranty and updated hardware that won't need to be serviced as frequently as your existing older infrastructure, which can directly translate into savings. uh, Employee productivity, having upgrading to 10 gig networking as a quick easy example can help improve employee productivity. But even just the basics of preventing people from having to wait for servers to reboot or dealing with degrading performance allows you to enhance productivity, which allows your staff to be more efficient. Who wouldn't want that?
Yeah, I can't count. Like my patience has come down so much. Like just waiting for a server to reboot. I'm like, ah, come on, man. Give me the new server on SSDs, all the latest stuff. So it reboots in
Yep.
like 2 seconds. It's yeah, everybody hates waiting for those servers to reboot. Woo.
Yeah, it used to be the norm that you would turn on your computer and you would go make a cup of coffee and come back in like 5 or 6 minutes and then it would be ready, it'd be ready for you. That is not okay by modern standards anymore. You should not have enough time to make a cup of coffee when you're sitting down to get ready to work. That is not okay.
Agreed.
Scalability and future proofing. Obviously, as businesses grow, their needs can change, and that is one of the factors that most impacts performance. We find on old servers is you get more users, you amass more data, you start using newer or more intensive applications. These are the things that are most likely to start slowing down your old equipment because your equipment was spec'd for a certain amount of people and a certain amount of stuff to happen to it. But as you grow, you can outgrow your equipment. So thinking about moving to new hardware presents another opportunity to reassess where the business is heading as far as growth targets and stuff, and ensure that you have hardware that's ready to be behind you as you move into the next track of growth.
I think that touches on our 10 gig Nick scenario,
Precisely.
like, hey, do you start are you planning on regionalizing your operation? So all right, you're gonna have a couple offices all over the place. Do you want to have fast network communications between them? How much data are you pushing through? I think that's a really good opportunity to start thinking about, where you want your business to go to. I think that's a great call out, Zach.
Thank you. Thank you. And of course, customer experience being improved. Faster, more reliable servers allows better response times and allows our clients to provide better service to their customers. Anytime you're experiencing slowness or running into issues, it impacts your ability to work, which impacts the experience to you and your customers by extension. So just a natural consequence of that is that it presents an opportunity for your customers to have a better experience.
Yeah, and I think, the people always know the newer stuff too. So if you're running a 2008 server, you're gonna have to find some real good SMAs that know 2008, because that knowledge is going away. So even when you're upgrading to the new stuff, everybody knows the cool new Intune 365 Azure stuff. It's a lot easier to get that kind of support when you're upgrading to the newer things. It's that older equipment. You're like, oh man, I gotta find somebody who knows Server 2003. Where are they? So
Hmm.
yeah, I think that kind of runs along the lines. That's a good call out too, Zach.
Yeah, knowing how to migrate from FRS to DFRS is a dying breed.
Yeah, I think we could go off for days about DFS.
Hmm. But luckily, we're gonna go off about cloud stuff. I'll give this one to
So
you, Robbie.
awesome. So, reasons to consider cloud and hybrid solutions. Ease of scalability. That's a really big one when it comes to cloud. If your servers are demanding more and they're already hosted in Azure, with the click of a button, we can improve the specs of that server. So maybe you had 4 CPUs and 16 gigs of RAM. You're like, man, this is going a little bit slow. Guess what? With a click of a button, we can quickly upgrade that to 8 CPUs, 64 gigs of RAM. Let's see how it works. And all it needed was a reboot. quick scalability. And we can scale down too. So maybe you don't need all those resources. You know, it was provisioned to be a little bit overpowered. You lost some employees. Hey, we can scale those servers down and then even reduce your costs because you don't need as much hardware. So it's really fun when you're in the cloud playing with scalability to make sure that you're using what is correct and appropriate for your business. Um, Mobility is, I think, one of the huge ones, especially in this world that we're now in today, the work from home world. Everybody is now in 365. What's really cool is once you start going fully cloud, once you start doing autopilot, Intune, managing all your workstations, um, you're free. I can take out my laptop. I can go halfway across the world. I can still work. Why? We're in the cloud. All of our servers are up in the cloud. No matter where I am, I can be connected. It's a really fun trick, getting everybody into the cloud just because hey, you could be wherever you want to be. You could be on vacation, answer a quick emergency, and then be back out. Hey, it was easy. So really being able to do what you need to do, go where you need to go, and still have all your work equipment with you is awesome. Enhanced security and compliance. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is where they're patching and securing things with all the latest equipment. So, hey, with MDM, I can secure my mobile phone. It's my corporate phone. Hey, I don't have to worry about my data leaking out somewhere, and they're always improving upon it too. So, if there was somebody figured out how to bypass BitLocker technology, they got paid $1 billion. But hey, Microsoft found out what they were exploiting, released a patch real quick, boom, don't even have to worry about it. So I think that's a big part to consider going to the hybrid and cloud solutions. Big one that I think you touched on when we were putting this together, Zach, was uptime. So
Yep.
you don't have to wait for that server to reboot anymore. You don't have to think about if I get a flood in my business, what am I going to do? I'm out of the business. My servers are down. I can't get them up. I'm gonna have to wait for parts. Maybe I lost data. You don't have to worry about that if everything's in the cloud. What servers? The flood happened. Hey, I can go home and quickly pick up my business emails. Maybe I want to let my clients know that I got flooded, but it's still, seamless transition back and forth. And then what I think is cool is always staying up to date with technological innovations. So I think every quarter I read something new that Microsoft released. So maybe you are already in the cloud. Microsoft released Copilot. Let's just give you a license for Copilot. Bam, you got Copilot now. So being able to stay up to date that quickly as things are getting released is really, really transformative for your business. So if you're already in the cloud, you could start taking advantages of all the cool features that get released to the cloud constantly and stuff you don't even know about. And you can always make sure that you're on the latest edge, always ready for the new cool stuff that everybody's releasing. And it's not going to be a big change to your business. You're already ready to go. You're like, yeah, let me just buy the license. I think that's a lot of fun things to consider about the cloud is really outlined there pretty well.
I agree. And next up, we'll start talking about how we work on prioritizing our replacements. As we were alluding to before, it's not always, reasonable to just replace everything all in one sweep. Sometimes it depends on budgetary restraints or business impacts. You have to kind of piecemeal things or tackle things in a specific order. So how do we figure out if that needs to happen, and how would we determine the order? So first we start with assessing. We got to figure out what servers you have, what mission critical applications and data that you have going on, and prioritize those that are being used for daily operations. So if you have older servers that are supporting mission critical applications or data that are needed for daily operations, that's something to watch out for. That's probably a server that we're going to want to, raise priority on getting replaced next to another server that doesn't have those same things on it.
What's an example of that, Zach? Is like a file server? Would that be one that you would consider?
So file servers would definitely be high priority because obviously if your file server goes down, oh, nobody has their files. That would generally not be great. Another one would be if you have like a remote desktop server, and you have like a remote workforce that needs to reliably have access to that in order to do their jobs. That's high use case, if high impact. If something like that goes down, that's going to probably hurt the business quite a bit. Mission critical app servers. If you have a line of business application that has like a SQL database or something that you rely on in order to do your jobs, if that goes down, is the business even going to be there tomorrow without it? These are the things that we have to think about when we're determining which ones are critical and which ones are not. Next up, performance. If you have a particular server, potentially a file server or app server that is particularly running into performance issues and is causing notable inefficiency amongst the workforce, that is another item we might look at for prioritizing. Maybe we prioritize replacing that server because it is impacting overall performance for the business too heavily, and the toll it's extracting is getting to be too much. Security risks. Look at whatever security risks potentially exist based on what outdated servers you have. If you have a bunch of servers running, say, server 2012, and they're all in relatively good health and doing well, but you also have a server in the background running server 2003 that is still important and critical, well, as far as security risks are concerned, we need to get on that 2003 box immediately because that one is the most likely to result in a security incident almost immediately. We don't even keep those guys connected to the internet as much these days. They are that risky.
Yeah, I think on a couple of HIPAA projects we had to completely isolate those to a totally different VLAN, really pinpoint down the traffic that could go in and out. So it gets really disruptive, even just to isolate those, just to be HIPAA compliant, you know? So there might be a security risk, but there might be a compliance need to do this. Are you HIPAA? Do you need CMMC compliance? You know, like that's a wild thing to take into account, I think.
Yeah, and again, like cyber insurance, whoever you have your cyber insurance with, if they find out you have a 2003 box sitting on the network with access to the internet and without any mitigations in place, you could lose your insurance.
Yeah, I've definitely, I think, filled out a lot of those insurance questionnaires. And like, what's in the environment? Shaking, writing 2003. You know, I'm like, oh, there's a 2003 server here. You know.
This is going to result in a phone call.
Yeah. Cool.
Uh, Cost benefit. Obviously, anytime we're looking at trying to replace hardware, cost benefit analysis is one of the most important things to do. We have to figure out the relative balance of risk and impact relative to costs. If it's going to be prohibitively expensive to replace this server that has a minor impact, but it's going to be less expensive to replace this server that has a higher impact, well, obviously, we're going to want to start with the one that has the higher impact and the lower cost. That just makes plain simple sense.
Yeah, I agree. And then because it's your team, Zach, that does a lot of these physical server replacements, what's the kind of downtime that they can expect? Do you have a ballpark figure?
That's actually a great question. I would say it generally depends on what kind of service they have, but for your average client that just has like a simple domain controller and a file server, there's not really downtime.
You're that good?
Our particular strategy
Ooh.
of hosting the new equipment next to the old equipment and migrating during normal business hours slowly throughout, say, a week or so allows us to avoid significant downtime. There will be a cutover point. You may have, to resolve some minor issues over the course of like a day or so, but there's no full 8 hour downtime craziness. No, we specifically engineer to avoid those scenarios.
Does it get worse though the longer you hold off on replacing the equipment? Does that make the project harder?
Oh, oh, it absolutely does. Obviously, the more time you let a server kind of just sit there, the more risk it's inherent. You're risking hardware failure, you're risking degraded performance, and degraded performance doesn't just impact your employees' ability to get their work done, it impacts our ability to get the data off that server. So the longer you wait, the worse it gets, which is all the more reason why it's very important to develop a phased approach. I'll skip to that now, actually. But
Cool.
this is why it's very important to plan ahead whenever possible for updating and replacing aging hardware. If you have a plan in place in order for when you're going to replace things and how, and you're strict and good with following that, you can avoid a significant amount of a lot of the risks and impacts that we discussed on this webinar today. And that's one of the reasons that our client strategy team is so valuable, is that they will work with you in order to make that happen so that we can reduce all of the craziness that we've been talking about today.
Yeah, because it gets generally more complicated and possibly even data loss if
Yeah.
a tragic event happens, right? And that's forcing us to upgrade. Is that right?
Yeah, we've had instances where through no fault of the clients, sometimes the money isn't there, it happens. But, a server runs into an emergency. There's potentially critical data loss, so hard drives die, it's the server itself, maybe the motherboard dies and we can't get a replacement. We've had to, restore from backups, and anytime you have to do stuff like restoring from backups and such, you're introducing a lot of extra downtime and just stress to the situation. And uh, the more we can plan to avoid those situations, the better for everyone involved. Because usually it's not only going to save you money, it's going to save you stress.
Anything to save stress these days, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
And of course, scalability. Uh, if you are expecting that you're going to be, say, acquiring another company, for example, and you're going to need to plan in order to accommodate that extra uh, boon to your workforce. You may need to, accelerate plans for hardware upgrades in order to make sure that you have enough infrastructure to support that massive increase to your company's growth.
Makes sense to me, man.
Yep. And that brings us to the end
So we're
of
just
our
gonna wrap up
presentation.
here. If you want more information on the hidden cost of outdated servers, definitely reach out to our fantastic client success team. Reach out to your CSM, or you can always email us at events@sourcepass.com. You can email myself. You can email Zach if you have any
Yep.
other further questions. We might have a project for you in the works, and you're like, "Hey, I want to have some more insights on it." We'd love to jump on a call and kind of discuss this through with you. Don't be afraid to reach out to anybody. We're definitely overly enthusiastic to help guide you on this journey to make sure that everything is working for you correctly. I'm just going to check out the chat real quick. Nothing in there. No Q&As. I think we did a very fantastic job explaining everything. But yeah, Zach, I can't wait to see what your next server migration looks like, to see how it goes. I know your team is pretty fantastic at doing those. It's bread and butter for you. You guys do so many
Yep.
every single day. You're doing a server migration, so I think your team's doing really well and has a lot of insight on that. You know.
Yep. I think we have three on the board right now, just off the top of my head.
Yeah, every day is a server migration over at Sourcepass. But yeah, if anybody has any questions about servers, infrastructure, cloud, how do I get there? What does it look like? Yeah, don't be afraid to reach out. And I think that kind of wraps up the webinar because I don't see any questions. So I think we're good to go, Zach.
Think so too.
All right, thanks everybody. Again, let us know if you have any questions, comments, concerns. We'll answer anything for you. Have a good one, everybody.
Have a great one.